Picture this. Standing on Coruscant, staring up at those endless shining skyscrapers, thinking this is the beating heart of the galaxy. And yet, just a few hyperspace jumps away, whole worlds are choking under gang rule, pirate raids, and whatever nightmare crawled out of the next system over. The Senate likes to brag about how united the Republic is, but if you live in the Outer Rim, that unity is about as real as a Padresa warranty. You get the speeches, sure, but none of the action. It's the same old story. Core worlds sipping calf in polished cafes, while Outer Rim farmers pray their next harvest doesn't get taxed by the local crime syndicate. Jedi swoop in now and then to solve a crisis. But the second it's over, they're back on Coruscant debating trade routes. Like it's the galaxy's most exciting spectator sport. And honestly, it's hard not to laugh at how predictable it all is. The Rim burns, the Core shrugs, and everyone acts shocked when the Separatists show up with an army. The thing is, Star Wars makes it feel almost normal. We've been conditioned to think of the Outer Rim as the perfect backdrop for scoundrels, bounty hunters, and that one cantina band who somehow keeps getting gigs. But if you stop and think about it, this is where the Republic's entire system starts to fall apart. It's like a ship with a gleaming captain's deck and a massive hole in the hull shore. The view's nice, but you're still sinking. And yet, the Rim refuses to just roll over. You've got rebels on Lothal blowing up Imperial factories, Twi'lek freedom fighters taking back Ryloth, and smugglers who've saved the galaxy more times than the Senate ever did. These people survive not because of the Republic, but in spite of it. And that's both inspiring and terrifying, because it proves they never needed the Core as much as the Core needed them. It's almost tragic when you realize how much history could have been different if the Republic had just invested a fraction of its resources out there. No separatist movement, no clone wars, maybe no empire at all. But hey, why fix a problem when you can ignore it for decades and then act surprised when it blows up in your face? The Outer Rim wasn't just neglected, it was practically set up to fail. In this video, we're diving headfirst into how the Republic's indifference toward the Outer Rim didn't just hurt the people living there, it doomed the entire galaxy. We'll explore why the Core turned a blind eye, how that neglect fueled war, and why it's one of the most underappreciated, yet critical pieces of Star Wars history. And yes, along the way, we're going to talk about crime lords, backwater heroes, and why a moisture farm on Tatooine might have been more important than a seat in the Senate. When you look at the map of the galaxy in Star Wars, the Outer Rim is this massive stretch of space that feels like the Wild West with lightsabers. It's filled with dusty trading posts, lawless hyperspace lanes, and planets so far from Coruscant, you wonder if the Senate even remembered they existed. And that's the thing, the Republic likes to talk about being a united galaxy. But when it came to the Rim, unity mostly meant ignoring it until it was politically convenient. Which makes you wonder, was this just oversight, or was it part of a bigger pattern in how the Republic operated? The Core worlds got all the attention: Coruscant, Alderaan, Chandrila, shiny cities, beautiful architecture, political influence. Meanwhile, Tatooine was literally being run by gangsters, and Naboo was nearly invaded by an army of battle droids, without the Republic even knowing until it was almost too late. The fact that the Jedi Council didn't even have a permanent presence in huge swaths of the Outer Rim says a lot about their priorities, and it sets the stage for why so many people out there didn't feel connected to the so-called democracy they were supposed to be a part of. Even the Clone Wars didn't start in the Core, they started in the Rim, with places like Geonosis deciding enough was enough. And when you think about it, the Separatist movement wasn't some random fluke. It was fueled by decades of neglect and frustration. The Republic barely enforced laws in the Rim, which made it easy for smugglers, bounty hunters, and full-blown warlords to take control, which in turn made the Senate see the Rim as unstable and not worth investing in. What's fascinating is that even in universe, the Outer Rim is treated as a narrative backdrop rather than a place of real focus. In the films, it's where you go to hide, to run from trouble, or to dig up some shady deal that the Core would never allow. Think about Luke Skywalker. Growing up on Tatooine, he was completely detached from galactic politics until the fight literally landed in his backyard. And yet, people like Luke were the majority of the galaxy's population, living on worlds the Republic barely acknowledged. It's that disconnect that makes the Outer Rim such an intriguing piece of Star Wars lore. Because when you start digging into it, you realize the Republic's neglect wasn't just a background detail, it was a core flaw in their system. And like all flaws, it was only a matter of time before someone exploited it. The maddening part is how obvious this problem was, and yet the Republic did almost nothing about it. They had centuries to build real infrastructure, enforce fair trade, and make sure Outer Rim citizens felt represented. Instead, they left entire sectors under the thumb of the Hutts, the Pike Syndicate, and Black Sun, like outsourcing public safety to the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. And somehow, the Senate thought this was sustainable. The real tragedy is the human cost millions of lives shaped by this neglect. Families on Ryloth, growing up under the constant shadow of occupation, whether by separatists, the Empire, or gang cartels. Generations of children on Tatooine who never saw a Republic official in their lifetime, only the crime bosses who ran their towns. The Republic's apathy wasn't just political, it was deeply personal for the people living through it. Think of the clones stationed on these worlds, fighting for a Republic that barely cared about the civilians they were supposed to protect. On Umbara, the Republic's own commanders turned on their troops, and no one back in Coruscant lost any sleep over it. The Rim became a place where tragedy wasn't news, it was routine, and the people who lived there learned not to expect help from anyone wearing the Republic's crest. For every heroic liberation the Jedi pulled off, there were dozens of planets that never got a rescue. Entire communities starved because supply lines were cut, and the Senate decided it wasn't worth the cost to reopen them. Even the Naboo crisis, which technically had a happy ending, left scars. How many Outer Rim worlds watched that unfold and realized they'd never get that kind of attention? And it's heartbreaking when you look at characters like Satine Kryze on Mandalore, trying to hold her planet together without relying on the Republic. Or the people of Lothal, abandoned to Imperial exploitation after the war, their farms and factories turned into tools for oppression. The seeds of that misery were planted long before the Empire. They were sown in the Republic's blind spots. The sorrow comes from knowing that the Republic could have been better. It could have been the democracy it claimed to be. But in choosing to protect its core first, and its rim last, it created a galaxy where the majority lived in quiet desperation. And yet, despite all that, the Outer Rim has this incredible resilience. These are worlds that thrived in the absence of the Republic's hand, forging their own identities, economies, and ways of life. The ingenuity you see in Star Wars often comes from the Rim, whether it's pad racing on Tatooine, the free-spirited pilots of Ryloth, or the daring smugglers of Corellia, pushing the limits of hyperspace routes. There's a kind of beauty in that defiance. For all the damage done, the Outer Rim never truly gave up. Even under the Empire, cells of rebellion sprang up from these neglected worlds, fighting back with whatever resources they could scrape together. Mon Mothma's alliance found some of its most loyal supporters out here, people who had nothing to gain and everything to lose by opposing tyranny. And they fought anyway. Think of Hera Syndulla, raised on war-torn Ryloth, who became one of the rebellion's greatest leaders. Or Saw Gerrera, whose fight started on Onderon long before the Rebel Alliance even existed. These weren't core world politicians, they were products of the Rim's survivalist spirit, forged in a galaxy that had already abandoned them. And that gave them a determination the Empire couldn't crush. The New Republic, for all its flaws, at least tried to rebuild connections with the Rim. And while we know from the sequels that they didn't always succeed, the effort itself speaks to a lesson learned. The idea that you can't just rule from Coruscant and hope the rest of the galaxy falls in line. You have to go to the people, live among them, and earn their trust. Even in The Mandalorian we see flickers of this hope. Din Djarin helping towns like Mos Pelgo free themselves from threats both imperial and otherwise. Small victories adding up, changing lives one settlement at a time. It's not the sweeping political gesture the Republic should have made. But it's something, and sometimes something is enough to inspire change. The Outer Rim's story isn't just one of neglect, it's one of endurance. And as long as there are people willing to fight for their homes, there's a chance to break the cycle that doomed the Republic in the first place. But when you step back, you see the cycle repeating itself, and that's where the tragedy lands. The Republic's neglect created the Separatists, whose war paved the way for the Empire. The Empire's cruelty gave rise to the Rebellion, which birthed the New Republic. And yet, even in the sequels we hear about First Order forces hiding in the Rim, growing strong in the same shadows that the Republic once ignored. Thank you for watching. If you enjoy my videos, please consider looking at my pinned comment and checking out the links for my Amazon storefront. It contains my favorite Legos, my gear in which I make videos, and comics that I read on a daily basis. I update it constantly, so please, take a moment and click on the link. On top of that, check out my second channel, Critical Analysis Hub Plus, and my third channel, Critical Analysis Hub XP. Just one click would go on a long way in supporting my channels and future in YouTube.